All right. Hi, everyone. We are live with Jeff Kinney and Grant Snider. My name is Kim Havens, and I'm the event manager for An Unlikely Story, our gorgeous bookstore in Plainville, Massachusetts. We can't wait to be back in our store, and we so appreciate your support during this very weird time that we're in. So just a few notes to make sure that you're able to view the event smoothly. Crowdcast does work best with the Google Chrome browser. If you have any issues with the video or audio quality, click on the help button. It's a question mark up in the right top corner, and you click on the compatibility mode. Your quality will improve, but you'll be on a slight delay. And if you decide, you can turn it off at any point. We have a question box, so any questions can be written in the question and answer box, not in the chat. We'll disable the, no, we're going to keep the chat going. If you see a question in the question box that is similar to yours, you can click to upvote that question and any others you like. So this helps cut down on repeat questions. If you have any unresolvable issues you can't fix, go ahead, click out, leave the presentation, and log back in and see if the problem corrects itself. And my pal Cassie is also logged in. She's in the background. So she will monitor the chat and she can help you if you're stuck. If you wish to buy a book, there's a buy button right at the bottom. It's green. Right below it looks like Grant's head on my screen. That will take you directly to the webpage where you can purchase the book, and we will be sending you signed book plates. So thank you, Grant. Thanks for that.
Thank you.
Your book will arrive separately. We're not back in our store yet, so we'll ship the book out separately, and then you will get an envelope with your book plate. So gosh, thank you so much for joining us for a very unlikely live event with Grant Snider in conversation with Jeff Kinney, the best-selling author of the Diary of a Wimpy Kid series and the owner of An Unlikely Story. And Charlie is both of their editors, so I'd like to say a personal thank you to Charlie for putting this all together. Grant is here to talk to Jeff about his new book, I Will Judge You by Your Bookshelf, a look at the culture and fanaticism of book lovers. It's no secret, but we're judged by our bookshelf. Some of us surround ourselves with books. We collect them, we decorate them, we're inspired by them, and treat our books as sacred objects. In this lighthearted collection of 1- and 2-page comics, Grant Snider explores bookishness in all its forms and the love of writing and reading, building on the beloved literary comics featured on his website, Incidental Comics. And I do have to say, I think the timing of your book, Grant, is completely serendipitous, since right now at this moment, we're welcomed into the living rooms of so many people and reporters and celebrities. And yeah, how many of them do their broadcast right in front of their bookshelves? And there I am trying to spy what is on their books. Grant is an orthodontist by day, I love this, and an artist by night. His comics have been featured in the Kansas City Star, the New York Times, and the New Yorker, as well as the Best American Comics 2013 anthology. He lives in Wichita, Kansas, where he is right now with his wife and 4 kids. I highly encourage you to visit him online at incidentalcomics.com. Along with I Will Judge You by Your Bookshelf, he's just released What Sound is Morning, which is a beautiful picture book. It's a companion to What Color is Night and helps children explore and celebrate their morning routines. So, without further ado, let's turn it over to Grant Snider and Jeff Kinney.
All right.
Thanks, Kim.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much, Kim. And thank you so much, Grant, for being with us tonight in this unusual way. And I actually wanted to start off with an apology, because the one and only time I met you, we went to a restaurant together, and that's where I met you. And I was like dead set on going to this place called Club Rodeo, because I knew it was like a cowboy bar in Wichita, Kansas, and that they had live bull riding inside of the, inside of the bar, and not just like, like a mechanical bull, but real bulls. And so I rushed us all through dinner so we could get to this place. And so I think you saw the very worst of me. So I just want to apologize for that.
One question, do you still have the cowboy hat?
I just read the book, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up. Yeah. And of course, the big suggestion from that book is to only keep things that spark magic. And that hat for me really does spark magic. That was a great night. And thank you so much for chaperoning us. That was really, really cool.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. You got to experience the true magic of Wichita, Kansas, bull riding and all.
And I came with Charlie, our mutual editor, and a woman who works for me named Vanessa, who is from London. And Charlie and myself and Vanessa all agreed that we were going to leave our normal lives behind, and we were going to all live in Wichita and go to Club Rodeo, like, every Friday night. So
I don't want to speak for Charlie, but I think that might have been the first time he's seen a bull in the wild. So maybe not. He's a city guy.
Or any animal of any sort.
Aside from pigeons, right?
Very special. So before we dive in, I can't wait to talk about your great new book. I just wanted to know, how has COVID-19 affected you? How has it changed your life?
So as Kim mentioned, I work as an orthodontist. So I was off from my day job for 2 months. And the first couple of weeks I was bouncing off the walls and didn't know what to do with myself. Then I kind of got in a rhythm. I drew a lot of comics. I caught up on some children's book work I was doing. And we went on about 3 family walks a day. So between all that, we kept our sanity. Now we're sort of slowly getting back to normal.
Wow.
Yeah. How about you? Say again?
You're back in the office now?
Yep. With a bunch of new protocols and procedures and equipment. We went back to work last week, and it's been good, but kind of weird. So yeah, back to reality.
You're an orthodontist. It sounds sort of like that's your secret identity. It's just the plant, it's your front, but you are an actual orthodontist, right? So I feel self-conscious around an orthodontist. Obviously, you have perfect teeth. Mine are not so perfect. My story with orthodontistry, I guess you could say, is that I'm a repeat offender. I'm a recidivist on Invisalign, right? So I've had like 5 sets of Invisalign. So in my house, my drawers are just full of Invisaligns. I just can't get through the program. So
I was the same way as a patient, but I don't tell my patients that because I don't want them to, learn from what I did. So,
so I still have the buttons on my teeth to hold the Invisaligns in place.
Next time you're in Wichita, I can polish them off for you.
Thanks. Hey, do they need polishing? I didn't. Wow.
Only when you're done with it. If you keep doing the Invisalign, no, never.
So have we talked about your new book?
Yeah.
About your bookshelf. It's awesome. I loved it, especially as a bookstore owner. Tell us what made you decide to write this book.
So I've been doing comics about books and reading and writing for, I think the first one in here was about 10 years ago when I was drawing for the Kansas City Star. And I realized that's a subject I can come back to because I'm an avid reader. I always am reading 2 or 3 books at a time. But I also have this outsider view, not coming from the literary world, where I think everything's kind of hilarious when I look at the ins and outs of literature and how books are made. So over time, there were enough comics to put together in kind of a sequential order and make what I think is a really nice book out of them.
Yeah, I think something that was really cool is that as I read the book, I recognized some of the comics. They've come across my news feed, and that just shows like how far your reach and your ideas are getting to. Like the one about the proofreaders marks. Can you real quick? Can you? It'd be a bit of a challenge, I think, but there's a great comic about proofreaders marks. Of course, when I send a manuscript off to my editor, Charlie, I get all sorts of squiggles that they never explain to us, like what, these squiggles mean. We have to figure it out for ourselves. So Grant did this great comic on the proofreaders marks and added a lot of fantasy to it. Yeah, I like write faster is a great quote. Word tornado, flying mustache, excellent. Yeah, sometimes I need a translation document for Charlie's proofreader mark. But let's go back a little bit before we talk about current modern day Grant Snider. Let's talk about you as a kid. I'm guessing you were a big reader?
Absolutely, yep. I won the 6th grade accelerated reader competition at my school for getting the most points. And that's kind of the highlight of my book career at this point.
And I have this idea that what we would do in our own bookstore is we would take famous authors like yourself, and we would recreate their bookshelf as a kid, their bookshelves as a kid. I thought that would be really cool because it would tell you a lot about that person. So can I ask what would have been on Grant Snider's bookshelf circa 5th grade?
And it's actually a good thing you asked that because I actually still have all those books pretty much. This book is dedicated to my parents, Tim and Rita, and over time, I've basically stolen every good book from their house, whether it's from my childhood or when they picked up when I was out of the house and I just wanted that for myself. So on that bookshelf, one of the important books is this A Light in the Attic by Shel Silverstein.
Yeah.
And it has the great, the awesome, typical Shel author photo. A little bit creepy to a kid, but but this book's special because the inscription, it's from my aunt from like 1981.
Yeah.
And if you can see, this book is well worn. So basically, like, none of the pages are in it. It's falling apart, but yet I still pull it out and read it, even though it's almost torn to pieces. So I was a big Shel Silverstein, Dr. Seuss fan. Those were kind of my go-to children's book authors and poets. The other side of me was into like scary things. So you probably remember the Scary Stories.
I knew you were going to show that. Yeah.
And this appealed to me as a kid who loved ghost stories, but also because of the drawings.
Okay. There's one of those that really haunts my dreams. I think it was Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark 1. And you know which one it is, I'm sure. It's the woman who's like a basically a skull. That one I can't believe those books were they were very R-rated, and yet they were part of book fairs, right?
Yeah, I still have nightmares to this day from them, but they were awesome.
Yeah, they were. So I always just read whatever came into my house. Like, I had an older sister. She read Judy Blume, Beverly Cleary, all those coming of age stories. I read my mother's picture book. She was an early childhood educator, so I got to read those great books by like Swimmy and books like that. Great picture books. What are the books that you brought into the house yourself that you didn't inherit from your parents or your siblings?
So probably the first time I would go out and buy books was a Scholastic book fair. And I'm surprised, after buying all the football and basketball cards, I had enough money to even, pick up a book. But I have these amazing memories of going to that Scholastic book fair, and you just see this whole shelf of books, all written for kids. It's not like the library where there's a mix of adult and kids books. And it was just my heaven on earth. And some books I got from that. Let's see if I can find a few.
Wow, you weren't kidding. You really did keep your books.
Well, it's not jumping out at me, but the Bruce Cavill's Book of Monsters and Book of Ghosts and Book of Aliens series. So they're basically short story collections, which collected some of Bruce's stories, but also all these different awesome children's fantasy and horror and science fiction authors. Some Ray Bradbury was always mixed in there. And so I love those books especially, and I would get them at the Scholastic Book Fair basically every year.
Yeah, going back to that Shel Silverstein book, I have a debate that I need settled. Was he trolling us with those photos? Was he trying to scare us? Especially on the back of, I think it was the Giving Tree, right?
Yeah.
He's not looking so kind, right?
I'm sure as like a bohemian folk singer, true artist guy, he liked the contrast of being this, sort of wholesome kids author with this other, outsider's lifestyle. So maybe that was his way to connect the two. I don't know.
Yeah. And so I was very curious. Like, I was actually kind of overwhelmed when I read your book, because there was so much content, and the drawings, you pack a lot of detail into these small cells. I was wondering, what's the actual scale of your drawings? Like, how large is the pad that you draw on, or whatever?
Probably about 11 by 14. So it's gotten, when I was starting off drawing in dental school, I was working on tiny teeth, models of teeth, trying to figure out. So I would draw my cartoons like minute, and I look back and I can't even read the early work I did because the text is so small, and my eyes have gotten bad and stuff. So now my pad of paper is probably about this size.
Wow. Yeah.
So between like the 11 by 14, 11 by 17 size. And then obviously now they're shrunk down to the size of a phone screen where most people read them. So it's an interesting design challenge, because it has to be viewed like, say, if it's a newspaper every once in a while, or it will eventually be in a book, it has to be legible there, but also on somebody's iPhone as they're, scrolling through Instagram or whatever so that's a challenge, but I, still try to pack a lot of detail on them.
Okay. I'm sure your patients will be eager to learn that your eyes are going bad, right?
I do wear glasses when I'm working.
Okay. So let's talk about your bookshelf right now, because I'm going to judge you.
Okay.
I'd like you to pull down a few books, or maybe you have some already out. Just take a random sampling. I want to see if there's any overlap between what I read and what you read, and I'll be looking I'll be looking on the right-hand side of the comments to see if anybody recognizes these books.
As far as humor goes, I've probably read everything David Sedaris has written. And I saw him when he came to Wichita, but the line for his signings is like 10 hours long if you've ever been to one. So I didn't actually get to have the book signed, but maybe someday.
I stayed in line for meatloaf once and I bailed as well.
Meatloaf.
Not the food, the guy.
Recently, I just finished reading Dragon Hoops by Gene Yang,
Yes.
which was amazing, because you can't watch sports right now. I think maybe the NBA season will be going on, but anyway, it's a good sports read for when you can't tune into anything.
Yeah. Did you know if you throw that book on the ground, it will actually bounce back up?
It has the texture of a basketball. It's amazing.
That's right. And I noticed that you have it in a case, a slip case already.
This is a library book. The library is just open, so now we can do drive-through pickup. You can't go in them yet, but this was one of my first. I think I put it on hold pre-pandemic, and it was finally ready post-pandemic. Well, not that we're post-pandemic yet, but
I'm interviewing Gene next week about his book. So
that's awesome.
From the library, and I got his book he sent it to me directly. So that means nobody's bought Gene's book yet, and we're not doing him any favors. So
Sorry, Gene.
One more book from your bookshelf.
Let's see. So I'll pull out a wild card. Actually, I got this for a previous presentation. Actually, I couldn't find it for a previous presentation, but maybe the most interesting book is Men Who Knit and the Dogs Who Love Them, which I found at the Barnes & Noble clearance aisle for like $3 a long time ago.
That's great. I remember when I worked on my book for a long time, 9 years before I showed it to my editor, Charlie, or actually 8 years I worked on it. And I remember I thought that I was not going to get it published because I hadn't had any success getting my cartoons published. And so I was depressed all the time that I was already sort of pre-rejected. And I went to the bookstore and I saw a book just like that one you just showed, but it was called Crowns, and it was about church hats, right? Hats that women wear to church. And I was like, this got published, but my book's not going to get published. Like, what's the criterion? Okay, so I'm going to ask you a question. You have a great page in there. It's in the early part of your book, and I'm forgetting what the page is called, but it goes like this: the book that you couldn't put down, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
And so I'm going to hit you with those rapid fire questions.
Okay.
I don't know if you can answer and find it. Can you do both?
I think it's at the front of the book.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. So you have to answer and find the book you couldn't put down.
Wind Up Bird Chronicle by Haruki Murakami.
The book you couldn't pick up. Gene Yang. Infinite Jest. Yes, that one haunts me. The book you gave to someone the book that someone gave to you that you haven't read.
Pass.
I
don't want to offend them. They're probably listening.
Yeah, exactly. How about the book you brought to the beach?
Collection of cartoons by Ross Chast.
Excellent. And the book you tried so hard to like? I'll bet you're going to pass again because you're a nice guy.
The Complete Works of William Shakespeare.
I was worried you were going to grab my book. The book you somehow own 3 copies of.
Diary of a Wimpy Kid.
There we go. That's awesome. And the book that saved your life. Too personal?
The book that made me a cartoonist, Life in Hell by Matt Groening.
Excellent.
My life made me a cartoonist.
I read those as well. And I remember just recently I was trying to go through my own books and trying to figure out what they were about. And I was like, okay, first book, middle school is hell. Second book, siblings are hell. Third book, sports are hell. Fourth book, summer is hell. You know, it's just like, boy, I think I was writing a book by Matt Groening too.
This the Big Book of Hell specifically. And you can sorry for the segue, but I was so inspired by this page. There's like any like big scene comic you see in the book. In my book, there's like the Writer's Retreat and the Story Coaster. They're all basically a ripoff of this Bongo's Dream House, which was like still one of my favorite cartoons ever.
I was wondering where that came from. I think it's so great. You have a lot of drawings like that in the book. How about the book that you grabbed from your own burning house? Is there one book that is really, really special to you? We hit that with the Shel Silverstein.
No, I don't know. I feel like they're all replaceable. Maybe I would grab one of my own that I've done, which is the first book I ever made, which is about Dennis Rodman working as a private eye. And so another book I stole from my parents' house. So basically, the plot of this is Michael Jordan
That's
is
really
kidnapped
cool.
by a deodorant manufacturer. I made this in 8th grade.
Wow.
And anyway, so basically, they end up winning the championship at the end. Sorry to spoil the ending of The Last Dance, but yeah, the Dennis Rodman Michael Jordan book I made in 8th grade is probably the one that's most special to my heart.
All right. So I'm guessing based on that book that you went to high school in, hold on, I've got to get that. I want to guess a year that you graduated from high school based on that book. I'm going to say 1996.
So no. So I wrote the book in 8th grade. So I was in 8th grade in 90.
Oh, I see. Wow, you're even younger than that. Okay. I was saying your graduating year in high school, but I was guessing you're
2004, yeah.
right.
Not as good of a year for basketball.
Right. How about a book that you've read that you thought deserved wider acclaim, that just feels like a special find of yours?
So basically, I'm sticking with cartoons because you're a cartoonist too and can appreciate it. But the Macanudo books by Liniers, he's a cartoonist from Argentina, and I know he's like hugely popular worldwide. So I mean, I don't think he needs my promotion, but I just absolutely love his cartoons, and I feel like they're kind of the modern day version of The Far Side meets Calvin and Hobbes meets all those great comic strips you grew up reading. And I think they're published by Enchanted Lion, and I think there's 3 or 4 of them in English now. And every time a new one comes out, I'm like, okay, I got to have this book. But I don't know that he's outside of the cartooning geeks and people, maybe the worldwide audience. I don't know that he's quite as popular in the U.S. as he should be.
Yeah, that's interesting. What I find interesting also is that it just takes you a moment to locate a book. Now you have a page I really like in your book that shows a comical way of organizing books. From I'm forgetting the labels right now, but from kind of pure fiction to straight fantasy. But the books you picked out are really funny. I think you're going to try to pull that up right now.
Yeah.
But I was just wondering how you've organized your books. Are they alphabetical? Are they by nonfiction, fiction, by favorites, by height, thickness?
Some by height, because I have some books that won't fit on various shelves. And at one point, I went through and I organized it perfectly. And there's fiction here, novels here. There was some nonfiction. There were cartoons here, picture books here, and it all just went to. It was all lost a week later. So there's no organization. I still kind of vaguely know where things are, but sometimes I'll not be able to locate a book for a couple weeks or months, and it'll turn out one of my kids stole it and took it to their little book reading area. But it's a different way of doing it, having no organization, but I think that's the best way.
And to you, what's the purpose of keeping a book? Say you read it, you absorbed it, you loved it. Why keep it? Why not give it away?
So for most of my books, as you can probably see behind me, have pictures in them. So if a book has pictures, whether it's photographs or illustrations or a book of a cartoon collection, I can steal from it. Basically use it as visual reference. So say I want to draw a cartoon with a big scene, well, I could find that Matt Groening comic and say, okay, this is how Matt drew a huge scene, and now I'm going to kind of do my version of that. So that's the reason to keep a book with pictures if you're a cartoonist, illustrator, photographer. As far as novels or poetry, I keep everything, but I only reread the ones that I really love. I'm not a very good rereader. So I think the reason to keep those is because it reminds you of the time you read it. Maybe you read it on a great vacation, or maybe somebody gave it to you for a gift and it really means a lot. Even if you don't necessarily go back and thumb through it, you still have that memory of the book and what it means to you.
Yeah, one of the things I really like about your book is that it goes so deep into a book lover's life. And one of the things that you explore a few times is the idea of that book that makes you feel guilty. That book that you haven't read and you feel like you should read. And I just wonder what that book was for you.
So anything you should have read on your high school English classics list or your college literature classics list, there's a 99% chance I have not read that book. So when I wrote this, so I am a cartoonist making a book about literature, and there's all these literary references that I read on Twitter or in various other books, and I don't know them. It's this blank spot in my reading knowledge and imagination. So I have to kind of fake it. So you'll notice in the bookshelf book, only a few times I'm actually referencing a specific author or a specific book. Granted, there are a few in there, but because I feel like if I try to say, oh, I'm going to write about, say, John Steinbeck. Well, yeah, I read Of Mice and Men, but all his other great works,
Right.
I haven't been yet. So I don't want to be called out by somebody who has that bigger literary vocabulary than I do.
And I saw that you have Infinite Jest both in your book and in person, basically.
Right.
Have you made your way through that book yet?
Yeah, I made my way to page 95, and that's where my bookmark's sitting, and
Right.
probably sit until the next lockdown in Kansas.
You know, I was really intimidated by that book, and then I started to listen to it, and I was like,
Oh,
okay,
awesome.
I understand it. And then something about it lost me. I think it was when I realized that the facts that it was sort of magical realism, or I'm not sure, that it wasn't exactly the real world.
Yeah.
I think, is that the book? Maybe I've got the book wrong, but I thought that was.
I haven't read enough to tell you either way. So.
Okay, but it's anything by Hilary Mantel. Also, like, I've tried to read Wolf Hall. I've tried to listen to it like 3 times, and I just can't. I can't absorb it. I don't know why.
Right.
And it's so well written. I can tell.
I've heard a lot of great things about that one.
And what do you think about audiobooks? Do you consider listening to an audiobook to be the same as reading?
I think you can get the same aesthetic experience. Personally, I don't, just because something with the rhythm of the voices doesn't click. I think it's because I'm used to having 4 young kids chattering at me all day, so so just more noise in the ears isn't necessary. But I think it's great. Yeah. Someday I hope to get into them, but I haven't done it yet.
And if you read a book by like Malcolm Gladwell or somebody like that, a serious fiction book, let's say you make it all the way through, a year later, can you retain, have you retained a lot of the information in the book, or did it just go right through you?
It goes through me. That said, like there's a few good ones. I read How to Change Your Mind by Michael Pollan. I read recently. Yeah. I think I retained a little bit of that because after I read a nonfiction book that I'm really interested in, I'll go listen to all the podcasts with the author, and I'll go read all the interviews with him. And so I think I soak it up, more through the post-reading research than actually reading and rereading the book itself.
Yeah. And something that I thought was really interesting in your book is that there's I think maybe one mention of an e-reader, right? There's this book really is about the love of books as a physical object almost. I was wondering, is there a book that it's as an object, that you love it as an object in a really special way that wouldn't be the same if you read it on the screen?
Absolutely. Yeah. Let me get it real quick. So I'm going to zoom out for a.
I haven't seen this before. That's amazing.
It's Sundays with Walton Skeezix. It's the Gasoline Alley Sunday comic strip. So this strip was published back in the 30s, 40s, maybe.
Yeah.
Back when the actual newspaper pages were this big. Wow. So the book printed at the size that the newsprint was in the original strips. And I think Chris Mayer did the forward and had some of the design stuff. So, but basically, like the way those strips are drawn, you wouldn't get the same effect if you saw it on an e-reader or even a book that was not, the size of your torso. So, and lately you might have seen the dust jacket was all like ripped up. That's because my 4-year-old has every day been taking it out of my office area, bringing it to the living room and flipping through it. So it's been walked on and jumped on. And I think that's the best. The other cool thing about a book that's much loved is it gets tattered like that. You kind of see the devotion to reading it.
Yeah. That looks like the kind of book that Charlie, our mutual editor, would love to publish. Yeah. And some of the drawings actually look like, I got to go into Charles Schultz's vault, and see some of the original artwork. And he actually was working on another comic. I'm forgetting the name right now. I'm sure Charlie could pop it up. But it looked like that. It was like a kind of a suburban life. It had grown-ups in it. And I'm not sure why he abandoned it, but I think it was interesting that he wanted to try out another idea.
Well, that's fascinating. I wonder if he drew it early on in Peanuts, or was it late career, or? It
looked like the style was really sophisticated. So I think that it must have been later on, when he really developed it. Yeah. So I'm very curious about your notebook. You say one of your chapter titles, Charlie says it's the Hagemeyer strip. Yes. I think it was called maybe the Hagemeyers. So I was very interested in your notebook. And you say you carry a notebook around with you. You have it, of course. So just flip to a random page, and tell us what's on it.
I'm going to have to find a good one real quick.
It was supposed to be a random page.
I can't show this to just anybody.
We want the good and the bad.
Okay, here's one that turned into a comic strip. So I was feeling very uncertain with being out of work and, you know, having to stay at home and all the weird stuff that came with the COVID-19 outbreak. So I drew a strip about uncertainty. Yeah. And this is really rare. Usually when I draw something, it looks like the other page of just like random scribbles.
Yeah.
But this time the comic kind of just came out and was not quite fully formed, but enough that I could go back to it and bring up my big drawing pad and say, okay, yeah, if now I just need to put this thing in my notebook onto my normal page size, and it's a comic. So it's wonderful when that happens. That's like maybe once in the entire notebook, which takes me probably about 6 months to fill one of these.
Yeah, and you write a lot about writer's block, about, you know, the struggles that a writer has, in lots, and you come at it from lots of different angles, whether you're exploring a writer's block around a single idea or the very idea of being a writer. You explore that struggle a lot, and I was kind of curious about what your struggles have been.
So my process, if it sounds stupid to call it that, but that's what it is. My process is to do one new comic per week. So whether that's one big scene or 12 panels, or sometimes it just keeps going and I end up with a longer strip than I need. So basically every time I do this, what I think is an awesome comic, and I post it or put it in a book or it goes in a newspaper or something, the very next Monday, I'm back to the drawing table with nothing. So, and at the beginning that was so frustrating because I'd be like, man, I just did what I think is so great. And it's awesome. You see an online response to it, or maybe people, you know, send you an email and say, oh, that was so nice. And then you have to get up the next morning and do it all over again. You probably feel that way with you know, making your books too. So early on, I figured out that the way to avoid ever having to really truly face a blank space is to just go back in old notebooks. So if you can see behind me, I don't know, way up in the corner there, that's my notebook stack. So there's like 10 years worth of notebooks there. So if nothing comes to me, next Monday when I sit down at the drawing table, I can say, okay, well, 2 years ago I was in New York City for my brother's wedding. So maybe I drew some sketches of this thing. I was thinking about this. Now I can put that into a comic strip today. So there's no true writer's block. There's just the frustration of when's that new idea going to hit? When's it going to be exciting enough to put down on paper?
Yeah, that's interesting. I've written, I think 14 books now, and wow. I keep a log of all the ideas for all of those books. And so, but I always worry if I go back, I'm like, am I picking up a rejected idea? Like, is it going to get worse and worse as I go along? My readers are probably telling me, yes, they're getting worse and worse. I kind of like to see how your mind works, and I'd like to sort of ideate on something. Okay, so in my new book, and I'm sort of cheating because I'm trying to pick your brain, right? In my new book, I'm thinking it's kind of a COVID-19 adjacent book. It's really not about that. But it is about the family being in a situation where they're in an enclosed place, and they're kind of getting on each other's nerves. And the mother just gives up, and she says, everybody can just set their own schedule. And so Roderick, who's the older brother in my series, he goes fully nocturnal, right? And so that's the setup, right? What comes to your mind when I say, okay, what happens when a human being goes fully nocturnal? I'd just like to see how you think. I'm putting you on the spot.
They probably grow hair in weird places. I think they would be skittering down to the pantry at all hours and eating all these random foods. Right. They have this crazy look about them, because I know whenever I come down to the, maybe I can't sleep and I go sleep on the couch downstairs or something, I'll see like a possum outside. So, and they're crazy anyway. So maybe he would start to mirror like that nocturnal wildlife, like a raccoon or a possum, and adapt some of their habits. So.
Yes,
I think the possibilities are pretty good with that setup. I like it.
Yeah, I hope it can work. I think that Greg will. Yeah, I was thinking about possums. That Roderick would be on the same schedule as possums. I think he would. Start eating. I think it would be funny if he kept the rhythms of the day, but they were just inverted, right? So he sits down for dinner at 3 a.m. or whatever it might be. And I was thinking that maybe his eyes could actually physically change, where he now can't see. He can see in the dark, but he can't see in the in the daylight. That
Right.
would be good too. But
With it all pupil eyes, I'm curious how that'll look on the page.
yeah, I think it would be like part
Okay,
sensitive.
okay, nice.
Yeah. All right, so I want to be judged by you. Actually, now it's time, because your book is called "I Will Judge You by Your Bookshelf." I'm not sure what kind of judgment I'm looking for, but let's just see if does this paint the picture of me that you would expect. All right, my favorite book of all time is "The Source" by James Michener. It's about a I know it's impressive. But it's about a single tell in Israel, where lots of different stuff happens from Stone Age times up through modern day Jerusalem. So that's my very favorite. I'm sure you know this one, Letters from a Nut.
No, I've never read it. I've heard of Jerry Seinfeld though.
You definitely have to read it. It's it's all of these letters, like real letters that were typed up in mail. This was before email, and they're just totally insane. And a lot of people think that Jerry Seinfeld actually wrote it, because it's his humor style, and it's also the introduction is written by him. But I think they discovered who the real person is. All right, I'm a Boston Celtics fan, so Drive by Larry Bird, which was told to Bob Ryan. That was a good one. Here's something I need. It's called Man Up, 367 Classic Skills for the Modern Guy, like, learning how to hold a baby, say, for example. Something I need to
before, but I wasn't man enough to keep holding it. So
right. Anything by Malcolm Gladwell, I love. I've got I Am Walt Disney. All the I Am books are great, because somebody like me who doesn't know much about, Lucille Ball or whoever it might be, can read this, in one sitting in the bathroom. Michael Jordan. I love 1980s basketball. My very favorite time in the world of basketball. I'm almost done. This is a book I've been told is great a million times. It's a guilty book because I haven't read it yet. This is Scribe by Bob Ryan. He's a big Boston Globe sports writer. And then I'll end with, two more. Here we go. This book changed my life. It's called How to Draw and Sell Comic Strips. And it just really broke it down for me. It was like, it was a technical guide. It showed me what kinds of pens to use, what kind of, erasers to use, what kind of paper. And then my all-time favorite author, favorite storyteller, can you tell just from this?
I can't.
All right, is Carl Barks, who I love Donald Duck, Uncle Scrooge, all that stuff. I actually have a statue of Uncle Scrooge in my office here. So if you were in my house during a party and you slipped away, would you think I'm a person of low character?
Absolutely not. No, the very highest character. There's some mutual interest. That's good.
There we go. So let's do this. We've gone to 7:40. We're gonna go to about 7:50, and let's get some questions from the audience. And Kim, I think you're gonna curate these, right?
Okay. Yep, I can do that.
So here's what Kim does. She takes the most popular question, and then and she goes down to less popular and less. So by the end of this, it will totally fizzle out into, just total nonsense.
No, because I feel like I owe Charlie. So I have to ask. He actually wrote 2. Oh. So I'm going to do Charlie's questions first. When does Grant do his work? He has 4 kids, a wife, and he's an orthodontist. How does he make or find the time?
A few years ago, I invented a time machine. So I just set the time machine back a little bit. I go back now. I used to do it in the early mornings before I'd go off to my day job. And then the kids started waking up earlier, and that stopped working. So now I'm at home on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And so I'll do a little bit, throughout the week during the morning. And then I have big chunks of time Tuesday and Thursday to do my real creative work. And I made a room, kind of in a little closet where I can go, and it's very, very quiet in there, and I can get all my work done.
Charlie
said that's not his question. That's another Charlie.
There are 2 Charlies tuned in.
There's 2 Charlies. Oh my gosh.
So you're famous, Grant, when you have 2 Charles Kochmans.
There's 2 Charlies. I'm sorry, Charlie. All right, so we'll go back to the top. So this is a question from Valentina. What is your biggest challenge when it comes to illustrating, writing, editing?
I think making it different every time. So you'll notice in the book, I mean, there's only so many topics on books and literature that you can go to, but so everyone's like taking that topic and looking at it from a slightly different angle, and I have to make sure I'm not repeating the same joke or the same punchline and stuff. So, but it's also cool because you get to some weird stuff that you wouldn't necessarily get to otherwise, like somebody using a book as a murder weapon, or somebody going in a haunted house with a book. I'm trying to. Anyway, basically, I think that breeds some creativity when you have the constraint of, okay, my comic's going to be about books. I've drawn 300 other comics about books. How can I make this interesting and unique?
Yeah, I wrote a book that we had released to the printer when I found out that I had repeated a joke from a past book, like literally repeated the joke, and I had thought I'd written it fresh.
It was probably a good joke.
Yeah, damn good joke. All right.
Okay. This one is from Nicole. What's your favorite reading spot and what's your favorite working spot? And Jeff, I definitely want you to pitch in on yours because you have a very unusual place that you've been working lately.
I'll let Jeff go first while I'm thinking of mine.
Well, try to talk. I do most of my writing at the cemetery. I park my car there. When it's cold, I've got a blanket. I've got some Oreo cookies, some Skittles, jelly beans, and I'll just sit there for hours in my car. And because it's a place where nobody bothers me, there's lots of people around, but nobody talks to me. And that's where I do most of my writing. How about you?
Lately, especially the 2 months I was at home with the family, there's this big tree out in the backyard, and it's been just a beautiful spring here in Kansas. So usually it's like hot and windy and dusty, or the mosquitoes come out, or there's too much rain. But it's just been amazing here. So I'll put a blanket out underneath this tree. I'll lay down and take a nap, and sometimes I'll wake up with an idea and just scribble it in my notebook. And if I don't have the notebook with me, sometimes I'll just read a book there and eventually fall asleep. And I thought that was amazing, and it's been great. I did have 2 tick bites recently, so I might have to be a little more careful. But that's been one of the simple pleasures of being at home.
That's cool. All right.
It's very cool. Okay. I like this one. This one is from Heather. If you could talk to a favorite author, who would it be?
That's for you, Grant.
I know.
That's for you, Grant.
When Grant thinks, he just goes very still.
Oh, okay.
I'm trying to build up the suspense here now. So some of the books I reread were by Kelly Link, who's kind of like a sci-fi, fantasy, horror, literary fiction writer. And the way her brain works is amazing. I'd like to just kind of see her process of crafting a short story and how she does it, because it's so foreign to me as somebody who draws words and pictures and does children's books too. How a short story is crafted, how you take just a very condensed amount of space on the page and just create this seemingly infinite world, and she does it amazingly.
Cool.
Wow. All right, so now we have Charlie Kochman. So this is a question for each of you. It's kind of a follow-up question to the last one. If you could meet any author from any time period of history, who would that be?
I'll let Grant go first on that because I'm going to think of something good.
Since we've been on the Shel Silverstein topic, definitely Shel, because I feel like that he'd be the most interesting person to sit down and have a beer with, or listen to him play songs on his guitar, or draw. Or it would just be, I think, a pretty interesting night to hang out with Shel Silverstein.
That would be so cool. Did you see that boat that he had? There was a boat that was for sale that was his boat. And
oh, that's awesome.
It was really cool. I was like, I want to buy that boat.
That's cool. I think I'd go with Charlie. I'm going to cheat. I'm going to go with Bob Dylan, even though he's not primarily known as an author, but because I like Bob Dylan. But then I go through this thing where I'm like, yeah, but he wouldn't want to talk to me and blah, blah, blah. But that he's very interesting to me. The way his mind thinks, I can't. What I love about Bob Dylan is he just puts like story bits out there that don't have a conclusion. The only decent thing I did when I worked as a postal clerk was to haul your picture down off the shelf in the cage where I used to work. It's like, that's all he says about it. And that's it. And it's enough. That's like, he does like story starters in a way. And I think that I'd really like to know how he does that.
What's your favorite Dylan album? Speaking as a huge Dylan fan, also.
Yeah, I really liked it when that original bootleg series came out because I felt like it was real treasures, that came out right then. How about you?
I kind of go between Blonde on Blonde, Blood on the Tracks, and then modern era Love and Theft. I think is still really has some amazing songs on it too.
I actually really like the place where most people dropped off from Dylan was when you got into the kind of Christian music. I actually really like that phase. I think it's like there's some really cool music there too.
I haven't listened to his 80s stuff yet. I'm just like, I don't know if the mid-career Dylan would ruin it for me, or if there's probably, like you're saying, some amazing stuff there.
Yeah, there is for sure. All right, so we have time for Kim. 2 more questions for Grant.
Okay, so Charlie liked your choice, and Paula saw the boat. So that's pretty cool. Okay. So this is from Sarah. She would like to know, what is your process when it comes to drawing your comments? I mean, drawing your comics. I'm reading the comments, so I had that.
Basically, starting with the doodle, the random sketched out idea, putting some words with it, and then coming back to it a month or 2 later, finding, okay, does this spark something in me that makes me want to spend a lot more hours with it, put it through the process of drawing and redrawing and coloring on the computer and posting. Yeah, so it's really just finding that creative spark that's going to, put me at the drawing table for hours on end.
And how do you do it? Use a Wacom to do your inking, to do your...
No, I'm kind of like a hybrid of digital and old school technology, I guess. So it's all with these pit pens, still in the wrapper, I guess. Haven't used those yet, but draw and pen, shade and marker, scan into the computers, and all the colors done in Photoshop. So
gotcha. And what do you use? You use a tablet or something with a pen, or you don't use a mouse, do you?
I for the 90% of the time I use a mouse. I have a tablet with a stylus, but it always crashes Photoshop when I use it. So I either need to get a better computer or just stick with the mouse. And you're a tablet, right? Are you?
Yeah. Well, the iPads come a long way as a professional tool. There's an app called Sketches that's really good, and you can do just about anything with it. So just not vector stuff.
I see.
All right. So we have time for just one more question. It's got to be
okay. All right, so this is going to be a good one. I'm going to put you both on the spot because I really want to see Grant draw upside down. This is from Michelle, and she would like to know if you can both draw something for us.
All right. All right, I'll try.
I know I'm going to be in trouble. Sorry, Jeff.
That's okay. I'm going to try to put it on the screen. All right. And Kim, while we're drawing, I saw somebody have a question for their 6-year-old wanted to ask. Okay.
No, she said, no, this is Michelle. She said, my question is for both of them, and my 6-year-old nephew would really like to see that. So you're drawing for her 6-year-old nephew.
We talked a little bit about Matt Groening influences, Grant, and I'm sure that Manny Heffley, who's my Greg Heffley's little brother, has some bongo influences. I love those clean lines of those comics. That's what really always drew my eye. What's the clean lines? All right, there we go. If anybody's watching on their phone, then Manny is about 3 pixels wide.
It's good to have a character that can be scaled, though, that can look perfect on tiny scale and big scale.
Yeah.
Grant, you are so good at drawing upside down.
I'm doing my best.
All right, there's my Manny. Look, I got lazy. I didn't draw the rest of them, and Grant is still drawing. All right, so therefore, I'm going to draw an upside down Manny. There we go.
This is supposed to be a cat, not a possum or raccoon here.
It looks like my cat.
My wife was having a tough day today, and I said to her, Julie, what do you think if we got a cat? And she All right, let's see. That I've never tried to draw any of my characters upside down, and I'm gonna say that's pretty good.
You're doing great.
It's like the Manny paradox or something like that.
That's amazing. The yin and the yang. And my cat turned out a little bit
That's really cool, Grant.
On the bottom there, but anyway. So here's the upside down bookshelf and cat. Now right side up.
Wow.
So Grant, I was telling you before that I named my son Grant, and I named him after I said to my wife at the time, there's only a few people I know named Grant, and they're all good guys, like Grant Hill, for example. And you're a good man too, so I want to say thank you so much for spending time with us. And please, everyone, buy this book. It's awesome. I will judge you by your bookshelf. Thank you so much for doing this tonight with us. It was really special. And thanks to everybody who tuned in.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Grant.
It was fun.
All right, bye-bye, guys.
Thank you, Jeff.